Marcus Chen pressed his back against the cold metal wall, feeling the fresh burn marks across his chest, where the plasma bolts had found their mark. Blood seeped through his torn uniform, but his eyes never left the young woman huddled behind the overturned table 20 feet away. Isabella Voss, heir to the largest mining operation in the Kepler system, clutched a small data pad to her chest like it held the secrets of the universe. In many ways, it did. The attack had come without warning during what should have been a routine inspection of mining station Omega-7. Isabella had insisted on seeing the new extraction sites personally, despite the protests of her board of directors. Marcus, her assigned security chief, had agreed only because he knew arguing with Isabella Voss was like trying to stop a solar wind with bare hands. She was brilliant, stubborn, and absolutely fearless when it came to her family's business. Now that fearlessness might get them both killed. The aliens had appeared just as Isabella finished reviewing the quarterly reports with the station manager. They called themselves the Zephyrian Collective, though Marcus had heard whispers of them in military briefings years ago. Tall, graceful beings with silver skin and eyes like liquid mercury, they moved with a fluid precision that spoke of advanced technology and centuries of warfare. "Human female," the lead Zephyrian called out, her voice carrying the musical quality that made their species famous throughout the galaxy. "You will surrender the mining rights documentation and submit to collective authority. Your resistance serves no purpose." Marcus shifted his grip on his pulse rifle, checking the charge indicator. 30% remaining. Not nearly enough for a prolonged firefight, but he had made peace with those odds the moment he accepted this assignment. Protecting Isabella was not just his job. It had become his purpose. The Zephyrian commander stepped into view, her tall frame moving with predatory grace. Unlike her subordinates, she wore robes that shimmered with embedded technology, and the crest on her forehead marked her as high-ranking nobility. This was no random raid. Someone had sent their best. "I am Dame Seraphina of the Outer Rim Collective," she announced, using the Zephyrian term for a female military leader. "Your mining operations have expanded into territories that belong to our people by ancient right. You will cease all extraction activities and transfer ownership to collective oversight." Isabella raised her head above the table, her dark eyes blazing with defiance. "Ancient right? Our surveys show this system was uninhabited when my grandfather established these operations 40 years ago. We have legal claims filed with the Galactic Trade Commission." Dame Seraphina's laugh sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but Marcus heard the threat beneath its beauty. "Human law means nothing in the void between stars, young heiress. Your grandfather took what was not his to claim. We merely correct an old mistake." Marcus knew enough about galactic politics to understand the real situation. The Zephyrian Collective had been expanding aggressively for the past decade, absorbing smaller territories through a combination of superior technology and carefully orchestrated legal challenges. The Voss mining operations represented one of the largest independent human enterprises in the outer systems. Taking control here would give the collective a significant foothold in human space. "The girl comes with us," Dame Seraphina continued. "She will learn proper respect for collective authority. The human male will remain as our gesture of mercy." Over my dead body, Marcus thought, but kept his expression neutral. He had learned long ago that showing emotion to aliens often gave them exactly the advantage they needed. Instead, he activated his comm unit's emergency beacon, sending out a distress signal that would take at least 8 hours to reach the nearest human military outpost. 8 hours. He needed to keep Isabella alive for 8 hours. "Dame Seraphina," Marcus said, stepping partially into view while keeping his weapon ready. "I propose an alternative arrangement." The alien commander tilted her head, a gesture that among Zephyrians indicated curiosity mixed with condescension. "The guard speaks? How unexpected." What arrangement could you possibly offer that would interest the collective? Marcus had been studying Zephyrian culture for 3 years, ever since intelligence reports suggested they might pose a threat to human mining operations. He knew their society valued personal courage above almost everything else, and their military traditions included ancient concepts of trial by combat that still held legal weight in collective law. "Single combat," Marcus said simply, "your champion against me. If your champion wins, we surrender without further resistance. If I win, you withdraw and honor our territorial claims." Dame Seraphina's silver eyes widened slightly. Around the chamber, the other Zephyrian soldiers exchanged glances that Marcus recognized as surprise. He had clearly caught them off guard. "You would invoke the old laws?" Dame Seraphina asked. "A human dares to claim the ancient rights of honorable combat?" "I claim the right of any sentient being to defend what they hold dear," Marcus replied. "Your own laws recognize such challenges, do they not?" The dame was quiet for a long moment, her liquid eyes studying Marcus with new interest. Finally, she nodded slowly. "The collective honors all ancient traditions, but you should know, human, that no alien species has ever defeated a Zephyrian champion in single combat. Our warriors are bred for perfection." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "There's a first time for everything." Isabella started to protest from behind her cover, but Marcus cut her off with a sharp look. She was brilliant enough to understand that this was their only chance. A firefight would end with both of them dead or captured within minutes. This way, at least one of them might survive. Dame Seraphina gestured to one of her subordinates, a massive Zephyrian male whose arms were covered in ritual scarring. "Commander Thane will serve as our champion. He has never been defeated in 47 challenges." Thane stepped forward, his movements showing the fluid grace common to his species, but with an underlying power that spoke of enhanced muscle density and reaction speeds. His weapon was a traditional Zephyrian honor blade, a crystalline sword that hummed with contained energy. Marcus set aside his pulse rifle and drew his own blade, a simple carbon steel sword that had been in his family for 5 generations. Next to the alien's gleaming weapon, it looked primitive and crude. That was exactly what he was counting on. The two champions faced each other in the center of the chamber, while their respective allies watched from opposite sides. Zephyrian honor demanded that the combat be witnessed by representatives of both sides, making it legally binding under collective law. "You fight with spirit, human," Thane said, his voice carrying the musical quality of his species. "It will be an honor to grant you a warrior's death." "The honor will be mine," Marcus replied. Falling into a combat stance his drill instructor had beaten into him during his military service 15 years ago. Thane moved first, his crystalline blade cutting through the air with a sound like singing crystal. Marcus barely managed to block the strike, feeling the impact jar his arms to the shoulder. The Zephyrian speed was incredible, his enhanced physiology giving him advantages that no human could match through training alone. But Marcus had not survived 3 tours of duty in the frontier wars by relying on fair advantages. As Thane pressed his attack, Marcus gave ground steadily, allowing the alien warrior to drive him toward the chamber's equipment lockers. The Zephyrian's blade work was flawless, a perfect demonstration of centuries of martial tradition and genetic enhancement. Every strike came exactly where it should. Every movement flowed into the next with mechanical precision. Too mechanical, Marcus realized, too perfect. Thane had been bred and trained to fight other Zephyrians, opponents who would respond to his attacks in predictable ways according to their shared martial traditions. Marcus had been trained to fight anyone who threatened the things he cared about, using whatever methods would keep him alive. When Thane lunged forward with a thrust that should have ended the combat, Marcus did something no Zephyrian warrior would ever do. He dropped his sword and threw himself sideways, grabbing a metal tool from the nearest equipment locker and hurling it at his opponent's face. Thane's enhanced reflexes saved him from serious injury, but the unexpected attack broke his rhythm just long enough for Marcus to roll behind a support pillar. The alien champion turned to pursue, confusion evident in his silver eyes. "Dishonorable!" Thane called out. "You abandon your weapon and fight like a scavenger." "I fight like a human," Marcus replied, scooping up his fallen sword. "We use whatever works." The next exchange was different. Marcus no longer tried to match Thane's perfect technique or overwhelming speed. Instead, he fought dirty, using the chamber's layout to his advantage, incorporating environmental elements into his attacks, and breaking every rule of civilized combat he could think of. When Thane's blade cut deep into his left shoulder, Marcus used the wound as a distraction, feinting weakness before launching a sudden attack that opened a gash across the alien's ribs. When Thane tried to press his speed advantage, Marcus retreated into a narrow space between equipment banks where the taller alien could not use his reach effectively. The combat stretched on for 20 minutes, far longer than any traditional Zephyrian duel. Both fighters were bleeding from multiple wounds, their breathing heavy with exhaustion. But Marcus could see confusion growing in his opponent's eyes. This was not how battles were supposed to unfold. Dame Seraphina watched the combat with increasing fascination. Her champion was clearly the superior warrior by every measure her people valued, yet the human continued to fight with a resourcefulness that defied prediction. When Thane managed to disarm Marcus for a second time, she expected the combat to end quickly. Instead, the human grabbed a handful of metal filings from a nearby workstation and flung them at Thane's face before diving for his weapon. The move was crude, desperate, and completely effective. "Your champion fights without honor," one of the Zephyrian soldiers observed. "No," Dame Seraphina replied thoughtfully. "He fights with a different kind of honor, one I have never seen before." As the combat entered its final phase, Marcus found himself backed against the chamber's main viewport, the stars of deep space visible behind him. Thane pressed forward, his crystalline blade weaving patterns of light in the air as he executed a perfect killing sequence. Marcus waited until the last possible second, then dropped flat to the deck. Thane's blade, committed to its perfect arc, struck the reinforced viewport behind him. The crystalline weapon, designed to cut through energy shields and battle armor, shattered against the transparent aluminum like glass against steel. Marcus rolled to his feet and placed his simple carbon steel blade against Thane's throat. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of both fighters breathing hard. Thane looked down at the primitive human weapon that had somehow overcome centuries of Zephyrian martial perfection, his silver eyes wide with something that might have been respect. "I yield," Thane said formally. "The human has proven victorious in honorable combat." Dame Seraphina stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "The collective acknowledges the outcome of this trial. Your territorial claims will be honored according to the terms of combat." But as her forces prepared to withdraw, Marcus saw something in the alien commander's liquid silver eyes that made him uneasy. She was not angry at the defeat. Instead, she seemed almost pleased, as though the human victory had confirmed something she had been hoping to discover. "Human warrior," she called out as her troops began filing toward their transport vessel. "You have shown us that your species possesses qualities we had not previously recognized. The collective will remember this demonstration." Isabella emerged from her cover as the last of the Zephyrians departed, her face pale but her eyes bright with relief. "Marcus, your shoulder. You need medical attention." Marcus allowed her to examine his wounds, wincing as she applied emergency bandages from the station's first aid kit. The pain was manageable, but he could not shake the feeling that their problems were far from over. "What did she mean?" Isabella asked. "About remembering this demonstration?" Marcus looked out the viewport, where the Zephyrian vessel was already disappearing into the darkness between stars. I think we just gave them exactly what they came here to find. Which was proof that humans are worth studying more closely, Marcus replied grimly. And something tells me Dame Seraphina isn't going to wait very long before she decides to continue that research. 3 weeks after the confrontation at Mining Station Omega-7, Marcus Chen stood in the security center of the Voss family's orbital headquarters, studying surveillance reports that made his blood run cold. 17 human mining operations had been attacked by Zephyrian forces in the past 2 weeks. In each case, the aliens had demanded single combat with the facility's head of security or military commander. Every human warrior who accepted the challenge had been defeated. They're using what they learned from our fight, Isabella said from behind him, her voice tight with worry. She had been studying the reports alongside Marcus, her brilliant mind quickly grasping the implications. You showed them something they had never seen before, and now they're testing other humans to see if they have the same qualities. Marcus nodded grimly. The pattern was unmistakable. After each victory, the Zephyrians had withdrawn without claiming the territory they had initially demanded, leaving behind only cryptic messages about continuing evaluations. They were not interested in conquest. They were hunting for something specific. The question is, what happens when they find what they're looking for? Isabella continued. Or worse, what happens when they decide they've learned everything they need to know? Before Marcus could respond, an urgent chime sounded throughout the orbital station. The main communication screen activated, displaying the concerned face of Admiral Harrison Vale, the highest-ranking human military officer in the sector. Miss Voss, Mr. Chen, Admiral Vale began without preamble. We have a situation that requires your immediate attention. 3 hours ago, a Zephyrian fleet of unprecedented size was detected entering human space. They are not responding to our diplomatic communications, and our intelligence suggests they are headed directly for your position. Isabella moved to stand beside Marcus, her usual confidence replaced by visible concern. How many ships, Admiral? 47 vessels, including 3 command dreadnoughts. That's 10 times larger than any Zephyrian force we've ever encountered in human territory. Our analysts believe this fleet represents a significant portion of their entire military capability. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate controls. They're not coming to negotiate. Admiral Vale's expression grew even more grave. Our intelligence networks have detected communications between the fleet commander and various Zephyrian noble houses. The content is heavily encrypted, but we have managed to translate fragments. They refer to something called the Proving Ground and mention harvesting superior specimens for what they term evolutionary integration. Isabella's face went pale. They want to capture humans for experimentation. It appears so, the Admiral confirmed. But not just any humans. Our analysis suggests they are specifically targeting individuals who have demonstrated the same type of unconventional combat effectiveness that Mr. Chen displayed 3 weeks ago. They seem to believe that studying such individuals will help them understand what they call human adaptive superiority. Marcus stepped forward. Admiral, we need to evacuate Miss Voss immediately. If they're targeting people like me, she's in danger simply by being associated with our mining operations. I'm afraid it may be too late for evacuation, Admiral Vale replied. The Zephyrian fleet has deployed some kind of interdiction field that prevents hyperspace jumps within a 3-light-year radius of your position. They have effectively trapped everyone in the system. Isabella moved to her command console and began pulling up tactical displays of the system. Her fingers flew over the controls as she analyzed shipping schedules, defensive capabilities, and potential escape routes. After several minutes, she turned back to face the communication screen. Admiral, how long until the fleet arrives at our position? 18 hours at their current speed. Miss Voss, I must strongly recommend that you surrender yourself to military custody. Our intelligence suggests that the Zephyrians are particularly interested in capturing you specifically. Marcus and Isabella exchanged glances. Why would they want Isabella? Marcus asked. Admiral Vale's expression became even more troubled. According to our analysis, the Zephyrians have been studying human social structures and have identified Miss Voss as what they term a leadership genetic line. They believe that studying the interaction between human leaders and their protectors will reveal the source of human tactical adaptability. Isabella straightened, her jaw setting in the stubborn line that Marcus had learned to recognize over their months of working together. They want to study how humans bond and fight for each other. That appears to be correct. The Zephyrians have been puzzled by human military effectiveness, despite our technological disadvantages. Their own society is based on individual genetic superiority, and they cannot understand how humans can fight so effectively as coordinated units. They believe that capturing and studying bonded pairs like yourself and Mr. Chen will reveal the secret. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. The idea of Isabella being subjected to alien experimentation filled him with a cold fury that surprised him with its intensity. Over the past months, protecting her had evolved from a professional duty to something much more personal. Admiral, what military assets do we have available in the system? The destroyer USS Reliant and 2 patrol corvettes, against 47 Zephyrian vessels. Our chances of victory in direct combat are essentially 0. Isabella turned from her tactical display, her expression showing the same determination that had driven her family to build the largest independent mining operation in human space. Then we don't fight them directly. Marcus, remember what you told me about your military service in the frontier wars? How small units could defeat larger forces by using terrain and superior tactics. Marcus nodded slowly, beginning to understand what she was thinking. You want to turn the entire system into a battlefield. Exactly. We have 17 mining stations, 43 automated extraction platforms, hundreds of cargo haulers, and 6 major asteroid fields. The Zephyrians are expecting to face a small military force or simply capture helpless civilians. They're not prepared for an entire star system to fight back. Admiral Vale looked skeptical. Miss Voss, with respect, civilian mining equipment is not designed for military operations. Even with the element of surprise, you would be facing a technologically superior force with centuries of military experience. Isabella smiled, and Marcus recognized the expression from their business negotiations with rival mining companies. Admiral, have you ever seen what happens when a cargo hauler loaded with raw thorium crashes into a warship at significant velocity? That would be a suicide attack, Admiral Vale protested. Not if the hauler is operating on automated pilot, Isabella replied calmly. And not if it's just one of dozens of such attacks happening simultaneously across the system. Marcus began to see the scope of what Isabella was proposing. A coordinated guerrilla campaign using civilian assets, hit-and-run tactics with industrial equipment converted to weapons platforms. The Zephyrians study individual combat effectiveness, Isabella continued, her excitement growing as she developed the plan. They understand how to defeat single warriors or small military units, but they have no experience fighting an entire civilian population that refuses to surrender. Admiral Vale was quiet for several moments, clearly working through the military implications. Finally, he spoke. It would require precise coordination and would depend entirely on the Zephyrians being unwilling to simply destroy everything in the system. They won't destroy the system, Marcus said with certainty. They need live specimens for their research. If they kill everyone, they learn nothing. Which gives us our primary tactical advantage, Isabella agreed. They have to capture, not kill. We have no such restrictions. Admiral Vale nodded slowly. I'll coordinate with our military assets to provide whatever support we can. But Miss Voss, you must understand that what you're proposing will likely result in significant casualties among your workforce. Isabella's expression grew solemn. Admiral, I've already sent system-wide communications explaining the situation. Every single person in this system, miners, cargo crews, technicians, administrators, has volunteered to participate in the defense. They understand the risks, and they understand what will happen if we fail. Marcus felt a surge of pride at her words. This was why he had come to care so deeply about protecting Isabella Voss. She was not just brilliant and brave, she inspired the same qualities in everyone around her. "What do you need from me?" Marcus asked. Isabella turned to face him, and in her dark eyes he saw a mixture of determination and something else that made his heart race. "I need you to do what you do best, Marcus. I need you to show these aliens that humans fight differently when they're protecting something they care about." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Isabella coordinated with mining station commanders throughout the system, turning cargo haulers into guided missiles, converting extraction equipment into improvised weapons, and establishing communication networks that would allow coordinated attacks across millions of cubic kilometers of space. Marcus worked with the military advisors Admiral Vale had dispatched, developing tactical plans that would maximize their limited advantages. The key was to avoid the kind of direct confrontation that would favor Zephyrian technology and training. Instead, they would use the three-dimensional nature of space combat and the Zephyrians' need to capture rather than destroy to create opportunities for devastating ambush attacks. When the Zephyrian fleet finally arrived in the system, they moved with the confidence of predators entering territory they already controlled. Their formation was textbook perfect, with scout vessels ranging ahead of the main battle group and command ships positioned for optimal tactical coordination. They had expected to find a small military force and a civilian population cowering in their orbital habitats. Instead, they found empty space where the major civilian stations should have been, and a scattered field of what appeared to be debris from evacuated mining operations. Dame Serafina, commanding the fleet from her flagship, studied the tactical displays with growing concern. Something was wrong with this picture, but she could not immediately identify what. "Fleet Commander," her tactical officer reported, "we are detecting no significant military presence in the system." The human destroyer and corvettes appear to have withdrawn to the outer system. "And the civilian installations?" 17 mining stations show as abandoned, but we are detecting automated distress beacons from multiple locations. It appears the humans evacuated in great haste, leaving behind significant amounts of equipment and cargo. Dame Serafina's liquid silver eyes narrowed. Her study of human behavior over the past months had shown them to be highly protective of their material possessions. For them to abandon valuable mining equipment suggested either panic or deception. "Begin deep sensor sweeps of the major asteroid fields," she ordered. "The humans are hiding somewhere." What the Zephyrians found was not hiding civilians, but carefully positioned cargo haulers loaded with raw thorium and piloted by automated systems linked to Isabella's command center. As the alien vessels moved to investigate what appeared to be abandoned mining equipment, the first wave of attacks began. The lead Zephyrian scout ship detected the approaching cargo hauler when it was less than 500 kilometers away. The vessel's captain had approximately 3 seconds to realize that the human ship was on a collision course before 200 tons of thorium and industrial equipment impacted his vessel at relativistic velocity. The explosion was visible throughout the inner system, a brilliant flash that served as the signal for 40 similar attacks spread across a volume of space the size of Earth's entire solar system. Dame Serafina watched in fascination as her perfect fleet formation disintegrated under assault by what appeared to be pilotless cargo vessels. Her tactical officers called out damage reports as ship after ship suffered catastrophic damage from impacts that should have been easily avoided. "How are they coordinating these attacks?" she demanded. "Our sensors show no command vessels in the area." Her communications officer looked up from his console. confusion evident in his expression. "Fleet Commander, we are detecting thousands of low-power transmissions throughout the system. It appears the humans have established a distributed command network using their industrial communications equipment. They are fighting as a single organism," Dame Seraphina realized with growing admiration. "Not individual warriors or even coordinated military units, but as an entire population acting with unified purpose. The second wave of attacks came from modified mining lasers hidden throughout the asteroid fields. The weapons had been designed to cut through solid rock, and while they lacked the sophisticated targeting systems of military hardware, they proved devastatingly effective against Zephyrian vessels that had moved too close to investigate what appeared to be abandoned mining sites. By the time the alien fleet regrouped and established defensive formations, they had lost 11 ships and suffered significant damage to twice that number. More importantly, they had learned that the humans were not going to surrender peacefully. "Fleet Commander," her tactical officer reported, "we have located what appears to be the primary human command center. It's the main orbital facility of the Voss mining operations." Dame Seraphina studied the tactical display showing Isabella's headquarters station. Unlike the other civilian installations, this one had not been evacuated. Sensor readings showed approximately 400 humans still aboard, including the energy signatures that matched the human warrior who had defeated Commander Thane and the female leader her analysts had identified as critical to understanding human social bonding. "Prepare a boarding force," she ordered. "We will take the command center and capture the specimens alive. It appears these humans are willing to teach us far more about their species than we had originally hoped to learn." The Zephyrian boarding pods struck the Voss orbital headquarters like metal rain against a steel drum. Marcus Chen watched through the security monitors as sleek alien craft locked onto docking ports throughout the station, their occupants moving with the fluid precision that characterized their species. Through his earpiece, he could hear radio chatter from human defenders throughout the system, continuing their guerrilla campaign against the alien fleet. "Boarding teams have breached decks 7, 12, and 15, Isabella reported from her command console, her fingers flying over the tactical displays that showed the station's internal layout. "They're moving in coordinated groups toward the central command center." Marcus checked his pulse rifle's charge indicator and verified the positions of the 40 security personnel they had stationed throughout the headquarters. Unlike the mining stations they had evacuated, this facility had been specifically prepared for the boarding action they knew was coming. "Remember," Marcus spoke into his comm unit, addressing the defenders spread throughout the station, "we're not trying to stop them completely. We're channeling them where we want them to go." Isabella had spent the past 12 hours converting her family's orbital headquarters into the largest trap ever set for an alien boarding force. The Zephyrians would find their path to the command center blocked in some areas and mysteriously clear in others, guiding them through a maze of prepared positions and booby traps that would whittle down their numbers while avoiding the kind of direct confrontation that would favor their superior technology. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as the first group of Zephyrian warriors encountered the abandoned sections of the station. The aliens moved with practiced efficiency, their crystalline weapons at ready as they swept through corridors that appeared to have been hastily evacuated. What they could not see was the network of sensors and remote-activated systems that Isabella had installed throughout those same corridors. "First group has entered Sector C," Isabella reported, "activating containment protocols." The corridor behind the advancing aliens suddenly filled with industrial foam designed for emergency hull breaches. The substance hardened within seconds, creating an impenetrable barrier that would prevent retreat while still allowing the Zephyrians to advance toward their objective. Similar traps activated throughout the station as alien boarding parties found themselves funneled into increasingly narrow paths. Marcus moved to his assigned position near the main command center, where the final phase of their defense would take place. Unlike their previous encounter, this would not be single combat governed by ancient honor codes. This would be a test of everything that made humans effective fighters when their survival was at stake. "Marcus," Isabella called softly from her command station. In the brief moment when their eyes met across the control room, he saw everything she had never been able to say during their months of working together. The professional relationship that had grown into something deeper, the trust that had developed between them, and the quiet understanding that they would face whatever came next as partners. "I know," he replied simply. "Whatever happens, Isabella, I want you to know that protecting you has been the greatest honor of my life." She smiled, the expression fierce and beautiful. "Then let's make sure it's not the last honor of your life." The first Zephyrian warriors reached the command center's outer defenses 15 minutes later, their numbers reduced from the original 40 to approximately 25 by the traps and delaying actions throughout the station. They moved with increased caution now, their leaders clearly recognizing that they were facing something more sophisticated than the panic-driven evacuation they had expected. Marcus activated the station's internal communication system. "Attention, Zephyrian forces. This is Marcus Chen, head of security for Voss Mining Operations. You are trespassing on human territory and threatening human lives. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The reply came through the aliens' own communication systems, the musical voice of Dame Seraphina herself echoing through the command center. "Human warrior, you have already demonstrated your species' capacity for adaptive combat. We require no further proof of individual capability. Surrender yourself and the female leader, and the remaining humans will be permitted to survive." "Counteroffer," Isabella said, activating her own communication pickup. "Your fleet withdraws from human space immediately. And we don't demonstrate what happens when 400 humans coordinate their defensive efforts in an enclosed environment." There was a pause before Dame Seraphina responded, and when she did, Marcus detected something that might have been amusement in her voice. "You believe your small number can resist trained Zephyrian warriors?" "I believe," Isabella replied calmly, "that you're about to learn why humans have never been successfully conquered by any alien species, despite being technologically inferior to most of our neighbors." The attack came with typical Zephyrian precision, the remaining warriors advancing in coordinated groups that should have overwhelmed any human defensive position through superior speed, technology, and training. What they encountered instead was something that no amount of genetic enhancement or military tradition could have prepared them for. The human defenders did not fight like soldiers following military doctrine or warriors bound by honor codes. They fought like a family protecting their home, using every advantage their environment provided while coordinating their efforts with an efficiency that bordered on telepathic. Marcus found himself in the center of the defense, not as a single champion facing alien warriors, but as part of a larger organism that included Isabella's tactical coordination, the engineering staff's knowledge of the station's systems, and the miners' understanding of improvised weapons and explosives. When Zephyrian warriors breached the main entrance to the command center, they discovered that the humans had turned the room itself into a weapon. Artificial gravity fluctuated in patterns that sent the taller aliens tumbling while humans, prepared for the changes, maintained their footing. Emergency bulkheads activated and deactivated in sequence, creating temporary cover while exposing alien positions to coordinated fire from multiple directions. Isabella's voice cut through the chaos as she coordinated the defense from her command console. "Team Alpha, rotate left and take position behind Bulkhead 7. Team Beta, prepare to activate emergency venting on level 3 when I give the signal." The Zephyrians, trained for individual combat excellence, found themselves facing an opponent that seemed to anticipate their every move while simultaneously attacking from directions they had not considered possible. When they adapted to one human tactic, the defenders immediately shifted to something completely different. Marcus engaged a Zephyrian commander in direct combat, their blades ringing against each other in a deadly dance of strike and counter-strike. But unlike his previous duel with Commander Thane, this fight was not an isolated confrontation. Even as he parried the alien's crystalline weapon, human defenders were attacking the warrior's flanks. Engineering staff were manipulating the environmental systems to create advantages, and Isabella was coordinating fire support from across the room. The Zephyrian commander, genetically enhanced for superior reflexes and strength, found himself overwhelmed not by any individual human capability, but by the coordinated effort of an entire group working in perfect harmony. When Marcus's blade finally found its mark, the victory belonged not to a single warrior, but to the collective effort of everyone in the room. Throughout the command center, similar scenes played out as human defenders used teamwork, environmental advantages, and adaptive tactics to overcome opponents who should have been vastly superior in individual combat capability. The Zephyrians fought bravely and skillfully, but they fought as individuals enhanced by technology. The humans fought as something greater than the sum of their individual parts. As the last of the boarding force fell or surrendered, Marcus found himself standing among defenders who were bloodied and exhausted but unbroken. Around them, the command center showed the signs of intense combat, but Isabella's strategic systems were still operational, still coordinating the system-wide defense that had already destroyed a third of the Zephyrian fleet. Dame Seraphina's voice came through the communication system one final time, but now it carried a tone of wonder rather than authority. Impossible. My warriors were genetically superior, technologically advanced, trained from birth for combat excellence. How were they defeated by inferior opponents? Isabella rose from her command console, blood from a minor cut streaking down her cheek, but her eyes blazing with victory. Because you made the same mistake that every alien species makes when dealing with humans. You thought this was about individual capability. It was about more than that, Marcus added, moving to stand beside Isabella. It was about fighting for something worth protecting. Your warriors fought for genetic superiority and military tradition. We fought for each other. There was a long silence before Dame Seraphina spoke again. The collective has learned much from this encounter. Perhaps too much. What do you mean? Isabella asked. We came here seeking to understand the source of human military effectiveness so that we could overcome it. Instead, we have discovered something that challenges the fundamental basis of our civilization. Through the command center's main viewport, Marcus could see the remaining Zephyrian vessels beginning to withdraw to a safe distance. Their formation was no longer the confident deployment of a superior force, but the careful positioning of explorers who had discovered something unexpected and potentially dangerous. For 1,000 years, Dame Seraphina continued, the collective has believed that individual genetic perfection was the highest achievement of any species. We have bred ourselves for enhanced capabilities, extended our lives through technology, and eliminated the weaknesses that we saw in lesser beings. Isabella moved to the communication console. And now? Now we have witnessed a species that achieves collective capability greater than individual excellence. You fight not as enhanced individuals, but as something entirely new, a group consciousness that retains individual identity while achieving unified purpose. Marcus exchanged glances with Isabella, beginning to understand the implications of what the alien commander was saying. The collective will not attack human territory again, Dame Seraphina declared, but neither will we ignore what we have learned here. Your species represents an evolutionary path that we had not considered possible. We require time to analyze the implications for our own development. Commander, Isabella said carefully, what exactly are you saying? I am saying that this encounter has changed more than the tactical balance between our species. It has changed how the collective understands the nature of intelligence, cooperation, and survival itself. Over the next hour, as the Zephyrian fleet completed its withdrawal from human space, Marcus and Isabella coordinated with human forces throughout the system to assess the aftermath of their unprecedented victory. The casualty reports were surprisingly light. The guerrilla tactics and coordinated defense had achieved their objectives while minimizing human losses. Admiral Vale's face appeared on the main communication screen, his expression a mixture of relief and amazement. Miss Voss, Mr. Chen, congratulations on the most impressive defensive action in recorded human military history. The strategic implications of this victory will be studied for decades. Isabella leaned back in her command chair, suddenly looking exhausted as the adrenaline of combat began to fade. Admiral, what's the status of the Zephyrian fleet? They have withdrawn beyond the interdiction field and are maintaining position at the edge of the system. Our analysts believe they are engaged in some kind of intensive communication with their home territories. Whatever they learned here appears to have shocked their leadership. Marcus moved to stand behind Isabella's chair, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. What happens now? Admiral Vale's expression grew thoughtful. That remains to be seen. The Zephyrian Collective has never encountered a military defeat of this magnitude, and according to our intelligence services, they have never faced an opponent that challenged their basic understanding of combat effectiveness. You think they'll be back? Isabella asked. Not as conquerors, the Admiral replied. But something tells me this is not the last we'll hear from Dame Seraphina. The kind of paradigm shift you've created in their thinking will have consequences that reach far beyond military tactics. As the communication ended, Marcus and Isabella found themselves alone in the command center for the first time since the crisis began. The tactical displays still showed the positions of human ships throughout the system, now coordinating cleanup and rescue operations instead of guerrilla attacks. Marcus, Isabella said softly, when you agreed to take this security position, did you ever imagine it would lead to redefining human-alien relations throughout the galaxy? Marcus smiled, feeling the tension of the past weeks finally beginning to ease. I thought I was signing up to protect a brilliant businesswoman from corporate espionage and the occasional mining accident. And instead, you ended up teaching an entire alien civilization that humans are more than they appeared to be. Marcus moved around to face Isabella directly, seeing in her dark eyes the same emotions he had been trying to suppress for months. Isabella, there's something I need to tell you. Something that this experience has made clear to me. She stood and moved closer to him. Close enough that he could see the determination and intelligence that had driven her to coordinate one of the most audacious military victories in human history. What is it? Protecting you stopped being just a job months ago. Fighting for you, standing by your side through all of this, it's become everything to me. You've become everything to me. Isabella's smile was radiant, containing all the warmth and affection she had been hiding behind professional competence and business responsibilities. Marcus Chen, you took every wound to protect me, faced impossible odds without hesitation, and stood by my side when any reasonable person would have run. Did you really think I hadn't noticed that I fell in love with my bodyguard? When they kissed, it was with the intensity of two people who had faced the possibility of losing everything and discovered that what mattered most was what they had found in each other. Outside the viewport, the stars of human space gleamed with the promise of a future that had been forever changed by the courage of ordinary people who refused to surrender to superior force. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, Dame Seraphina was learning that evolution was not always about individual perfection, but sometimes about the extraordinary things that could happen when individuals chose to fight for each other. The Zephyrian Collective would return eventually, but not as conquerors. They would come as students, seeking to understand the lesson that Marcus and Isabella had taught them. That the greatest strength of any species was not in the enhancement of the individual, but in the bonds that connected individuals to something larger than themselves. In the end, the aliens had been right about one thing. Humans were worthy of study, but what made them worthy was not their individual capabilities or their tactical innovations. What made them worthy was their capacity to transform protection into love, duty into devotion, and the simple act of standing together into something that could change the galaxy itself.